Whoa! Good thing I turned the microphone on right before the show started. And Shane is sporting some ink today. He is sporting ink. I did not know that. I know you're that big of a stud. 540-0580. 540-0580. That's the talk line number. You have a legal question, legal concern. Call in now. I'm Carl Rominger. I'll answer your questions here on the air. And, of course, throughout the week, and even right now, you can go to weekendappointment.com and post. I have posted a little thing about cell phones and driving on there, which might not be exactly legally related. It's more my opinion about whether we should have a cell phone ban or not. So if you want to know what I said, go read it. Feel free to comment there or call in at 540-0580 and tell me I'm wrong. Oh, boy, let's see. What else? I had a busy week. I had a DUI trial. I lost that one. Lost it. That happens. We had a good fight. But by the way, the government, the state police laboratory, the blood. When you go to court, a lot of judges, a lot of prosecutors think that blood is a very accurate measure of your blood alcohol content in a DUI case. And to some extent, that might have been true, or it might be true in some instances. However, the state police lab testified at this trial that they allow for up to a 6%. In other words, they allow the machine to overread or underread your BAC by 6% and still report it as an accurate result. Now, you following me on that? Because any of you that know the DUI law know, for instance, if it's a second offense DUI and you're a 159, you go to jail for 90 days and you don't lose your gun rights, and they can only put you on probation for up to 2 years. On the other hand, if it's a 161 or a 160 BAC reading, you go to jail for up to 5 years with a 1 year mandatory. And it changes for all different levels of DUI. It changes your punishment. And so when the state police tell you that you're a 161, you might actually be below that because they're not going to consider that 6%. They're just going to report that number out. And unless your attorney actually fights it and gets the state police lab in there to testify or convinces the district attorney that that's what they're going to say, well, then you're in trouble. They're still going to be in trouble, but at least you won't be in as much trouble as you should have been. My point is, folks, we got some great testimony out of it, so you lose the trial, but you learn some useful information. Tom, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. What's going on, Tom?
Yes. Hi, Carl. Thank you for taking my call. I'm glad I finally got through to you. I was going to call week after week, and then every time I try to call you, something would come up. Hey, I had a quick question for you here on a construction feature. Yeah. I had a painter that I hired in August of 07, to do some outside painting on my house. And he showed up off and on intermittently for a couple days, and then he wanted, the balance of the job paid, and I paid him, unfortunately. And he's never finished the job. And I was wondering, it's been since August of 07, and I have a two-part question to this thing.
Okay.
Is there a statute of limitations on that kind of thing where you can go back? Because I would think about taking him to small claims.
You had a contract, so we'll do the first part, and then I'll let you throw me the second part. You had a contract, and so the statute of limitations generally on breach of contract is 4 years.
Okay.
But it's not 4 years from the creation of the contract. It's 4 years from the time that the person defaults or makes it clear they're defaulting on the contract.
Okay.
So the last time he showed up to paint would arguably be the date you were on notice that there was a problem because he never showed up again.
Well, he didn't imply that or even state that. It got into the winter, it was outside, and he said, well, I'll be back in the spring to take care of this. So
that's probably then when we would argue the breach would arise. But good news for you is you're saying this all happened in 07, so we don't even have to get too philosophical or worry too much about it, as long as you just go ahead and promptly move to a lawsuit.
Would you recommend? Well, I was thinking just small claims court.
Yep.
It's $1,700.
Yeah, and the one little caveat about small claims, and a lot of people don't realize this, is win or lose in small claims, either side can appeal it up to the Court of Common Pleas.
Right.
But it is a good place to start because a lot of disputes can be resolved there. And more importantly, it's easier to kind of do it yourself there.
That's true, yeah, without an attorney. $1,700 isn't a huge amount of money or anything, but it just, and he did do some work, and he was supposed to, he said, finally he told me, he said he'd just pay me back because he has issues and he's waiting on the settlement of an estate to pay it back. But every time I kept a good log of every time I called him and everything. But every time I call him, it's like, oh, the money's here. It's going to come soon. It's just one of those things. And I was wondering, is there any kind of criminal activity in this type of thing? Where
it potentially could be criminal. I mean, there's this really weird line, and when I say that, is it criminal? Is it not criminal? It's hard sometimes to make that determination because if I come over to your house and I say I'm going to paint your house, you give me some money, and I don't paint it at all, did I steal money? Yes, or was I intending? What was my intent at the time? And so the criminal authorities usually, if a person partially performs on a contract in a one-instant sort of situation, will just simply say it's a civil matter.
Okay.
On the other hand, if you're the sixth person that he's done this to, it may start to look more like a criminal enterprise.
Yeah, it's showing a pattern there type of thing.
And then it becomes a little easier to argue fraud. The other thing is, reality is the criminal authorities don't want to be involved in every what I call quasi-type criminal situation. But you might find a police officer who would file the charges, and the answer is it's more of a allocation of resource issue rather than could they potentially prosecute him.
Oh, I see, yeah. Well, I was thinking the most appropriate way to go would be like small claims for something like this. And then as far as getting settlement, you may get a judgment, but I've always heard it's kind of tough to collect sometimes.
That's correct, and that's why if he rolls into the small claims court and says, "Here, give me $500, I'll give you $500 and you leave me alone," you say, "Deal."
Just take it, huh?
That's right. Cut your losses.
He keeps promising me he's going to pay it. He's just having problems right now, so he says.
The other thing you can do is put him on a payment plan and or have him sign a reacknowledgement of the debt, which will reset the 4-year statute of limitations.
Oh, okay.
All right, my friend.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank
for
taking my call.
No problem. Glad you finally got through.
Oh, yes. It was mostly my fault. It wasn't yours. You were there. I just couldn't get a hold of him.
Couldn't get to the phone. All right, my friend.
Thank you very much, Carl.
540-0580. Carol, you're on WHP 580 with attorney Carl Rominger.
Hello.
Hi, Carol.
Oh, hi. I have a question. I belong to a local women's club, and a question just came up recently as to whether we need to pay any sales tax on some fundraisers we do. All of the money does go to either charity or to a scholarship. And the only exception there is we do have an insurance policy to cover us in case there's some injury to someone who's participating in our activities or to some of the mailings that we send out. But otherwise, the money goes to charity.
Huh.
Do we have any obligation to pay any sales tax?
I don't think so, but...
Okay.
Where you would start is the PA Department of Revenue has a manual that's going to tell you if you have to file or not.
Okay.
And whether you'd be exempt. And I assume you're not a 501c3 status or anything fancy like that yet.
Yeah, we have, I don't even know what that is. So
right.
I assume not.
That's the IRS subsection that has to do with being a not-for-profit organization.
No.
But each taxing level has its own rules. And so I would refer you to the Department of Revenue website because I don't know that off the top of my head. But you'll find a manual that should be able to walk you through whether you would need to or not. Okay.
Do you know if we would have, we're not talking a lot of money here. We might donate maybe $5,000 a year. That may be the maximum.
Right.
Would we possibly be liable to go back several years?
We're
small potatoes.
It's
relatively.
What do they say in the military? Don't ask, don't tell. Yeah. I think if you just go ahead and say, hey, if you find out you need it, you just go ahead and say, this is what we need to do. They may or may not ask you to go retroactive. They'll probably just be happy you came forward.
Okay.
All right.
Very good. Thank you for your help.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Got to go to ad here, 540-0580. Carl Rominger here. I'm an attorney at law answering your legal questions here on the air. The charge is a phone call. If it's long distance for you, suck it up. 540-0580. Call in. We were talking a little bit with some callers earlier about a few different issues. A painter that didn't follow through with their work. Folks, don't ever pay 100% of the bill until the work's done because otherwise they'll never come back. Larry, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Hi, Carl.
Hey.
Thanks for taking my call, first of all.
Thank you. What's going on, my friend?
Well, I have a nephew who's got himself in a bit of a jam. He has been charged with criminal trespassing.
Okay.
And the boy has no money. The only assets he has are in his IRA.
Right.
His personal IRA. So he's looking for a public defender to take his case, and my question is, his mother's question specifically is that IRA attachable in any way?
Well, you mean by who? The government or the third party? Your IRA generally is, for instance, exempt in bankruptcy. So if I sue you for $1 billion and you go bankrupt, you can keep your IRA, generally speaking. There's a big Supreme Court case on that not too long ago. So because we don't want to take away people's retirement or dedicated pension funds, because otherwise society has to take care of them years later. So the long answer would be no, I don't think anybody can go directly after the IRA because he could go through bankruptcy protection. Now, if he's criminally liable to somebody for some amount of money, like let's say he took a baseball bat and smashed up a car and he had a criminal restitution order against him, I don't think they can tap the IRA for that. Conversely, that can't be discharged in bankruptcy, so that would follow him too. So am I helping you here? I'm not sure where you're going.
Well, where I'm going is, that's the only asset the boy has. And he's no boy. He's 38 years old.
Right.
But that's the only asset he has. And my question really is that attachable? Yeah,
the short answer is no. Generally is not attachable. Generally not attachable. However, he might be able to borrow against it. I don't know if he has a program where he's allowed to borrow against it or not. So he could use that money to finance what he needs to do now, pay it back later. But I don't think anybody's going to attach his IRA.
Okay. That's pretty much the question at this point.
And if he's charged with criminal trespass, the felony version?
I would like to think so, because as I understand it, he entered someone's house.
Uh-huh.
They allowed him in. He knocked on the door. They knew him. They invited him in. Then there was something about the guy's wife or ex-wife, and there was someone else in the car with my nephew who wanted my nephew to do this, to see if this woman was there.
Right.
And the whole thing got out of hand, and they were leaving. The gentleman owned the property that allowed him in, asked him to leave. He did so without any altercation.
Right.
Got out in the car with two other fellows, and they were pulling out of the driveway when the owner came out and started beating on the guy's car, not my nephew's car.
Right.
But start beating on it, and now there's a lawsuit generated, or at least it's going to be a hearing to see if there is a case, I guess. I don't know. It's been cited with criminal trespass.
Yeah, to me it doesn't sound like criminal trespass. I mean, the elements aren't there. If you invite me into your house or let me into your house and then you order me to leave, it's not a criminal trespass at that point. The
other thing that happened, there was a fight ensued between the guy that owned the house and the driver of the car.
Which has nothing to do with your nephew.
No, that got pretty ugly. But then my nephew got out and pulled his friend. Well, they were both acquaintances, but pulled his friend that was beating on the guy, pulled him off.
Right.
And they got in the car and took off.
Well,
so now the suit has been filed.
Here's what I tell you. You can't pick your public defender, and there are many public defenders in central Pennsylvania that I would let represent me. On the other hand, you might get the kid that's 6 months out of law school and doesn't really know a lot of the angles. I would advise your nephew to suck it up and figure out how to beg, borrow, don't steal some money, and get a good criminal defense attorney, okay?
All right.
All right, my friend.
All right. This deal's coming up on the 3rd. I'm not sure we have time to do that. But.
Well, you'd be surprised, but you got to move fast. You can usually get a continuance if you go in and see the judge, or if you can talk with a lawyer. A lot of times the lawyer can secure the continuance for you.
All right.
All right, good luck.
Thank you, sir.
540-0580, Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Steve, you're on WHP 580. My number is 540-0580, just to be repetitive. What's going on, Steve?
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call.
No, thank you for calling.
Right. My mother has been in a retirement community for the last 10 years, and when she went in, she, full disclosure, told them she had $500,000 in her cash accounts, and she had a retirement home in the South Jersey Shore area. And her money in 10 years has gone from $500,000 down to now she's about $80,000. And the retirement home is wondering what share of her house would be usable if she continues to be in good health and live, another 10 years, because, the $80,000 is not going to sustain her like the 500,000 did for 10 years.
Right.
So her house is deeded with 4 sons with right of survivorship.
Okay.
It's $1 million home.
Right.
So our question is, what are we going to be on the lam for if her 80,000 is gone? How much of that house, with the understanding that the deed is right of survivorship with 4 sons, what would we be responsible for financially to her?
Well, when was that deed created?
Excuse me?
When was that deed created?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. You might. There's a 5-year look back provision these days, so they might be able to set that deed aside and say that they should be able to recapture the entire value of the land. The flip side is, I'm just thinking this through real quick. The flip side is, it's been 3 years. At the time you did it, was she already in the home?
Oh, yes. Well,
yeah.
She was in a building on the premises. In other words, she had a private property that she paid, $100,000 to go into on the premises, but she's not in the nursing home itself. It's a community.
Right.
Going into the nursing home at a later time.
Okay, and that's important because that's one of the other things we look at to see, was this designed, with the idea that she was already in bad shape or not.
Oh, no, absolutely not. In fact, she's still in good shape.
Potentially, there's a claim. In other words, they may have a claim against that property, and how that's going to get resolved. Some people are going to say, they can collect the full amount. My experience has been, when that's happened, we've usually been able to compromise. It depends who the lien's going to be for. If it's Medicaid who ends up picking up a financial burden here, they're going to collect it vigorously. If it's the home itself that's just a little behind on the money, they may settle with you out of court. But I do think that there's a potential claim. I'm not sure, and it would be for the money that's owed against that asset.
Well, there's no money owed against the house. I mean,
no. I mean to the home.
Oh.
I mean, we net it out against that asset. So if the home can say, we're out $100K, and it's $1 million home, then you guys take $900 and we take $100.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay. Well,
but,
that's what we wanted to know. That's the bad news. But
yeah, and now I'll give you a little caveat here. Given the amount of money at stake, it would make sense to actually sit down with a real live lawyer in their office and have one of us look things over a little bit more carefully. Because there may be some other things. I mean, I'm giving you a thumbnail sketch here, but I would want to know the exact dates, the health, a lot of data points that we can't go into here on the radio.
Right, I understand.
Okay?
Okay, sir. Well, thank you.
All right, so definitely talk with somebody because you might be able to shield it, you might not, and probably the answer to that question is worth some bucks.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Todd, you're on WHP 580 with attorney Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. Hey, Todd.
Yes, sir. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I'm calling on behalf of my fiance. She was employed, and she also owed a bill to FIA for student loans.
Okay.
FIA garnished her wages in the amount of $80 per week, so $160 per month. She got paid biweekly. Her employer took that amount out for 3 years, but only paid FIA 3 times. Now, she's talked to an attorney who said she has to contact the DA because I assume that's criminal.
Right. It's a failure to make lawful disposition of the funds. There's no doubt about that.
My questions are, she's going to suffer because now she's on the collections list because it has been turned over to collections for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And also, she will not be receiving a tax return.
Well, now let me. The bad news here is, you can only get so much retribution, criminal or non-criminal. And what I mean by that is, if the employer did something illegal, they certainly be prosecuted. But what damage and how you undo that, I don't know. Do you go to FIA and strike a special agreement? We've done that before. I can think of a client who had an accountant who ran off with some money that was supposed to be being sent into the Department of Revenue, and they struck a deal with him and said, you still owe it, but we're not gonna treat you like a redheaded stepchild.
Right.
So you can renew your liquor license every year. So we'll just make a special little side agreement, understanding what happened here wasn't really your idea.
Yes, and because she's in collections, FIA will not talk to her.
Yeah, it's probably worthwhile having somebody go the next step up, which is instead of talking to the droids, get legal counsel engaged and talk directly to counsel for FIA.
Okay.
The one weird thing, and this is true of all big companies, large organizations, the legal department sort of sits in the chain of command, usually somewhere near the top, but kind of off to the side because they have to interface with all the other levels. Mm-hmm. And the one nice thing is when I find as a lawyer, I dealt with Microsoft one time, and I got the number 8 guy in their legal department, was able to resolve something quickly for a client. You can know how large of an organization that is. Because they sit sideways, you don't have to go through layer and layer and layer and layer of people up the line. The legal guys usually can just put you in contact with the true decision maker right away.
Well, and this was a very small, one-person owned business.
Right. And you're not going to get complete satisfaction because you're never going to be able to beat all the harm back out of the situation. I mean, that's unfortunate. But yeah, I would recommend she move quickly on that so that at least somewhere along the line that it's caveated that it wasn't her fault.
Well, and I didn't know if that fell under like a defamation of character because of her being sent to the collections department.
No. I mean, they can send you to the collections department if you're behind for any reason. And if you read those agreements real carefully, I mean, you're ultimately liable. And if your employer's not remitting the money, then theoretically you should be realizing that when you check your statements regularly.
Okay.
All right, my friend, I got to go to break here.
Great. Thank you.
540-0580. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. And I want to remind you, I just got one in the mail yesterday, the free will application. I opened up the envelope, didn't recognize the name on it. And I said, oh, look at this. There's the free will. Somebody went to the Weekend Appointment website. It's weekendappointment.com. They clicked on how to get a free will. They went to the registered user section. And, of course, they registered as a user. And printed out their free will application and sent it in. And voila, they're going to come see me. We're going to give them a will. It's going to cost exactly $0. And if you've got a husband or a wife who hasn't taken advantage of it, they can as well. So can you. So go ahead and get in here. Get in my office yourself or as a couple, and we'll update your wills. If you need an update, you did one 5 years ago, and you want to write one of those little rats out, that kid that doesn't really do what he's supposed to do, or you want to change something around, it's all free. So go to weekendappointment.com to do that. And who we got here? Leon, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger. My talk line number is 540-0580. What's going on? Leon.
Yes, how you doing, Carl?
Good, man. What's going on?
My son was terminated from work back in August, and he was terminated because he didn't renew his driver's license.
Okay.
It's a CDL. He was sick prior to his termination, but his license but ran out in July. His name was on the board to have his license renewed, et cetera, and the company says that he violated the rules to renew it, violated the rules to have his license renewed. He was consequently terminated. However, he did ask to be sent to schools, that he needs to do it for CDL work, and he had to, and he was said, we're too busy right now, we can't do that.
Right.
That was a couple of months prior, too. He got sick somewhere before, or shortly after his license ran out, and he got sick, but when he came back to work, he did have his license renewed, but he was terminated. And consequently, they also said they objected to or contested his unemployment compensation.
And did he have a hearing on it?
No, he did not have a hearing, but he did question it as to why. And they said because they contested it.
Yeah, and if they contest it, he has the right to have a hearing.
Okay.
He has to ask for that. He only has 30 days, I believe, from the date that they contest it to ask for the hearing.
You have to ask for it.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Yeah, if they contest... Go ahead.
This happened back in August. September. So we should have done it back then already.
Yeah, he may have completely lost his ability to do that. You can do something called a nunc pro tunc, which is make now what was then, which means kind of go backwards in time, but you have to have a basis for it, like the clerk at the filing office told me I didn't need to file this paperwork, or some kind of breakdown in the system.
Okay.
Mere lack of knowledge of your legal rights is not enough. And so let me use this as a jumping off point for 1 second and tell anybody out there, if you've been terminated or an employee has quit and filed for unemployment, you've got to respond to that paperwork and follow through the natural steps. But if he'd have read the fine print, it would have told him he was entitled to a hearing on those issues.
Okay.
So I don't know what else to tell you, because it doesn't really matter what my answer is. If he should have had a hearing and didn't, then he's lost his right to collect. The flip side is, can an employer fire somebody because of any condition they want? And the answer is yes, as long as it's not like race or religion. And your remedy is unemployment if it was not being fired for willful misconduct. If you have a medical condition and you can't do the job because of a medical condition, you have to give your employer notice of that. And as long as you give them a notice of it, if they can't accommodate you and they fire you, then you can get unemployment.
Well, my thought was he was negligent in getting his CDL renewed. However, he did drive unknowingly at the time that he didn't have a valid license, but it took him a month to terminate him.
Right.
And it just didn't seem right.
Right, and that's an issue. I just raised that as a defense one time not too long ago. They terminated somebody, and they said, this is the reason we terminated, which was not permissible. And then they went back and they said, oh, yeah, but they also a month before did this as well. And then the month before that, they did this as well. And the judge said to them, you didn't terminate him for that. You kept him on board. You can only, it has to be willful misconduct too. So the courts have held that when a nurse gave the wrong drugs to somebody and killed them, that was negligence, not willful misconduct. And so you're right when you use the word negligence. The difference between willful misconduct and negligence can often make the difference.
And it also has gotten back to us. He applied for jobs at various places, and when that employment people that he was applying to his job, they called for references or to see what happened, and they were giving a bad report that he steals and he lies.
Yeah, well, he can sue for defamation if that's in fact what they're saying and it's not true.
Okay.
All right, Leon, you got a couple things there. I got to go because I got a few more callers I need to get to here.
All right. Thank you very much, Carl.
Thank you. Call in again sometime.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. 540-0580. Let's see who's next. Brian, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Thank you for taking my call, Carl. I have a landlord-tenant question. My current rental lease is up on June 1st, and we don't want to renew the lease, so we're going to give our proper 60-day notice. But our resident is now, we found out, is not going to be ready for another 2 months. If I continue to stay in that house the 2 months past the lease, does it? Because it says in there that it'll automatically start a whole new year over.
Okay. So,
basically, what I'm saying is, if I don't stay in this current house for the 2 additional months that I need, I'm going to have to go into a motel.
Right. Because you're going to, and what, have you talked to the landlord to see if they're willing to voluntarily let you stay 2 months?
No, I haven't yet. I just kind of want to see legally where I stand.
Yeah. Obviously the terms of the lease are what they are, and if you roll over into a new term, then you by not getting out in a timely fashion or terminating before the first term is over, you are kind of bound to that other term. So your best bet is to bail if you have to, but in the meantime, go to the landlord and say, "Here's my plan." Now, hopefully, you're on good terms with the landlord. If you're a horrible tenant or something, they're gonna be like, "Great, I want you out," or I want you in. I don't care which one it is, but I'm not going to work with you. But if you're on okay terms with the landlord, they may say, yeah, I appreciate the fact that you could leave right then, but you're going to give me 2 more months rent. And that, of course, gives me time to put it on the market and market it, and I can let people know it's going to be available on this date. So it's win-win. His only danger is you might not get out. So if I were his attorney or your attorney, I would draft kind of a little interim, like 2-month lease that says, here's our new agreement, and here's how it's going to work for these 2 months.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. Sometimes, folks, the best answer is a practical answer, and a lot of times, while the legal rights, you're either in or you're out, a lot of times from a landlord or a tenant standpoint or both mutually, they can reach an agreement that will resolve the problem without having to fight. And that's why staying on good terms with the other party in any relationship is often valuable, because you never know where you're headed down the road. If you go on weekendappointment.com where you got the email for today, you'll see about somebody who was in a relationship and wasn't on good terms and got a divorce, and you might want to read that because it does kind of same idea. If you don't stay on good terms, you're not always going to know what the other one's up to. Dave, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Hi, Carl. Thank you very much for the service.
Thank you.
My question is, I regularly drive an antique car, and I was on a state highway, and a woman came out and struck the car in the rear. And, of course, she had insurance in that particular vehicle with my insurance company, and I have regular tags on it, not antique tags. But I have the required insurance, but no comprehensive.
Right.
Now, the impression I get from the insurance company, they may be likely to drag their feet, particularly on some of the items, like it has spoke wheels, and both of those spoke wheels became bent from sliding across sideways on a highway.
Right.
Now, my question is, if I elect to, well, by the way, I have two estimates, and they were around $3,900, and they're very close to each other.
Right.
In the amount. If the insurance company says, no, we're going to total it, or we're only going to give you $1,000, can I go get the car repaired to my satisfaction according to those estimates, and then take her to court to collect the
difference?
I'm sorry?
The difference, or the...
well, no, whatever my costs were.
Yeah, if you settle... Now, let me give you a couple of rules here. The insurance company, you're not your own insurance company, but because you don't have comprehensive on yours, so you're dealing with her insurance company, right?
Yes.
If you settle with that insurance company, you're settling your claim with her. So anything you do with that insurance company would kill your ability to go after her. That's the first premise we need to understand.
Right.
So you can either settle with them or not settle with them. If you can't reach a settlement with them, you would sue her directly.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and the lawsuit against her directly, if you can get it repaired for $3,200. Now, there is this concept in the law that we call it the total. We don't let people collect the value of their repair if the car is so irreparable or would be so expensive as to repair that it might as well just be the whole car.
Well, this particular model car right now, they're selling in that condition between $12,000 and $14,000.
Yeah, then you're not in anywhere danger of being declared a total on a $3,500 repair bill, and I would hold out for it. I would not let the insurance company, and they'll give you 10,000 reasons why they don't need to pay you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then I'll be over to see you. You can give me 11,000 reasons why they should.
Right.
Okay.
All right, my friend.
Okay, thank you.
I got to go to break.
I'll be in contact with you.
Okay.
Shortly.
And you can get my phone number and my email off weekendappointment.com.
Well, I've been over to your office already.
All right.
And thank you for the fine service.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Right, bye.
540-0580. See you after the break. (540-0580). Carl Rominger here, live from the WHP 580 studios. They call it the big one. 540-0580. Answering your legal questions. Anthony, what's going on, brother?
Hello?
Yes, Anthony, you're on the air.
Hi, Carl. How are you?
Good, good.
I have one question for you.
Yeah, and I appreciate the call.
Okay, I'd like to ask you about a city charging a property for services that are not used.
Okay.
I have a house that's unoccupied, and the city declared it uninhabitable. The water and the city forced the electricity to be terminated, and yet they continue to charge for garbage services for, I think, for the incinerator.
Right. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's sort of like the water bills, sewer bills, all those municipal services. A lot of times have a baseline bill, whether you're actually using the service or not. And that, in that regard, it's a lot like a tax, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking that it's actually a tax because they're forcing you to pay for something not used. Is there any way to challenge that, to force the city to remove those charges?
I don't think so. I think you're going to find that through the enabling legislation, they can basically tag each party at a baseline rate, or each property at a baseline rate, whether it's actually being used or not. But I don't know the answer to that because I guess the next step is if the house is truly condemned and unusable, what if you get a demolition permit and turn it into a lot? Do they charge lots? So we'll need to actually look at the ordinance and see how it's written.
No, it's not that it's going to be demolished. It's just that it can't be used because the water is shut off.
Right.
And then they told the electric company to shut the electricity off. So the city has declared it uninhabitable.
Right.
Even though it's uninhabitable, they continue to charge for habitable services.
Correct. I follow what you're saying, and I'd have to take a look at it. But I think if it's a potentially habitable property, they can. I guess my question is what's the exact enabling legislation that they utilized, or the exact language of the ordinances, I should say, that were based on the enabling legislation? And it's going to be, without looking at that actual ordinance,
okay.
Can't really answer right now.
I would have to get a copy of the ordinance and then contact you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I will do that then.
All right, my friend. Thank you.
Bye.
540-0580. Annie, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Hello.
Hi, Annie.
Hey, hi, Carl. How are you?
Good. What's going on?
Hey, well, it's a long, complicated story about my mother has Alzheimer's.
Okay.
She's still living at home with my brother and nephew. However, it's getting very bad. About 3 years ago, we tried to have my brother evicted, but a local JP said that he was an invited guest. He doesn't pay rent. He has a full-time job. He's trashing my mother's place with cars and vehicles. And now he's getting angry at me because I'm starting to clear out the house and getting caregivers in there. And he's threatening me. My question was, he's under the assumption that he is going to have the rights to that house since the JP didn't kick him out.
Right.
3 years ago. My mother has no money. When she goes to the home, I'm telling you, they'll take everything. I'm well acquainted with all that.
Right. And they will ultimately evict him as well.
Okay. He wouldn't have any rights.
No. I do not. I don't think
have
so.
told him that. I've told him he should even go to an attorney with me to hear that, and even to the county. But he's just getting angrier and angrier.
And your other option is, if you want, at some point, if you want to contact me off the air, I'd be happy to write you a letter. Just sort of, you give me the facts, and I'll regurgitate them in a letter with a little legal analysis, and at least you have something to show them.
Okay.
All right, Annie?
I think I would love to do that.
Okay. Get my phone number, email off the weekendappointment.com website, and the lovely staff at my office will get you in.
Thank you. This is a big problem.
Trust me, I can believe it. And I would tell you that what we're struggling with are the issues that a lot of us have struggled with and are continuing to struggle with these. So,
I'm sure.
But
he's threatening now.
Yeah, and you might as well get it clarified, peace of mind, and more importantly, I liked your approach, which is, hey, just go talk to somebody, because a lot of times when people are in the dark, if you can get them to somebody that knows what's going on, sometimes they'll come around.
Yeah. Well, I told him, I even said to him last week, look, if you can show me where you're going to get the house, I'll stop cleaning out this mess right away. I will be glad to. But he's just, he threatened to put a bullet in my head. Now he's getting really angry, so I don't know.
All right.
I'll call you.
Keep me posted, Annie.
I'll see you. Thanks.
All right. Bye. 540-0580 is the talk line number. Make sure you go to weekendappointment.com and get the free will. Make sure you go there and post your questions throughout the week. And we've got some really good, lively discussions going on there amongst the users. There are a little over 1,350, like 1,360 registered users. Stacy, you're on WHP 580.
Hey, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. Hey, a couple callers ago, he talked about the services in the city of Harrisburg. And I live in the borough of Middletown, and you're probably aware of the situation going on there with the electric rates?
Yes, I believe Mr. Durgan and I had a discussion a little bit about that the one day.
Yeah, what's happening, of course, is that they're buying it at a wholesale rate and then selling it right around 16 to 18 cents a kilowatt hour.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My question is that, we have a new borough council, and, we're wondering, what's going to happen. But is there any way to ask an outside state agency or a federal agency to come in and try and audit those books to actually see if what they're doing has been legal? Whereas they're taking the money, the profit, throwing it back into the general fund and using it at their
right.
Disclosure.
Right. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that, but I would tell you I would start by contacting the Auditor General's office here in Pennsylvania, because I don't know if they audit local municipalities or not. I don't think they do, but they would certainly be able to tell you who could do that.
Yeah, because I thought, that's where I thought I'd start is with the AG, but, somewhere along the way there has to be some help at 16 cents a kilowatt hour when the rest of the world's paying 10.
Yeah, well, and of course the political resolution is get new people in there and get them to get things fixed.
Well, they're in there now, and hopefully they're going to turn it around, but, there has to be some money that was sitting somewhere that people aren't seeing, so.
Right.
But, all right, well, listen, hey, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
All right, take care.
Yeah, Bob and I had talked about that. Durgan and I had talked about that on the air. I mean, it's just craziness. Flip side is, I grew up in a hometown where they had power by the through the township. You buy it from the local village, and they struck a contract back with the Niagara Mohawk back in the day to knock down the rates. So in my hometown growing up, you could basically heat your house with electricity for like $14 a month. And that was like some 90-year contract that expires, in 2030 or one of these deals. And you can imagine the sticker shock that's going to happen when people go to paying real rates for electricity up there. Now, if you had a business, it wasn't the same. Those were commercial rates. But for home use, in order to make sure they had enough customers, they locked in a lot of the little townships. And, of course, there was a neighboring town where the town fathers had not agreed to that because at the time they thought it was a bad deal, and it probably was. Well, weekendappointment.com. I want you to go to weekendappointment.com and check in with me throughout the week. And I want to hear what you're thinking. I want you to comment on my cell phone position. So go find out what I said at weekendappointment.com and then tell me if I'm right or wrong.